So today, we're celebrating Nityananda Trayodasi, the most holy appearance day of Sri Nityananda Ram. And we'll start off with Nadia Godruma. Nadia Godruma Nityananda Mahajana. Patiya Chinam Hattu Jivedaka. Shadha Bani, Shadha Jani. Prabhu Anjay Vai, Mage Evisha. Bolo Krishna, Bas Krishna, Bolo Krishna. Apararasun. Hoy Lohe Krishna Nam. Krishna Mata, Krishna Pita, Krishna Danapran. Krishna Re Samsara Kore Chari Anachar. Jive Doi Krishna Nam Sarva Dharmashar. In the land of Nadia, on the island of Godruma, the magnanimous Lord Nityananda has opened up the marketplace of the holy name, meant for the deliverance of all the fallen souls. O people of faith, O people of faith, by the order of Lord Gauranga, O brothers, I beg these three requests from you. Chant Krishna, worship Krishna, teach others about Krishna. Being careful to remain free from all offenses. Just take the holy name of Lord Krishna. Krishna is your mother. Krishna is your father. Krishna is the treasure of your life. Giving up all sinful activities. Carry on your worldly duties only in relation to Lord Krishna. The showing of compassion to other souls by loudly chanting the holy name of Krishna is the essence of all forms of religion. These 4 verses to this song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur could be studied for days and days and days on end and carry the full import of Krishna consciousness. This is how important this song is. So, yesterday at lunch, Hansarupa leans over to me and goes, oh, by the way, you're giving class tomorrow morning. Oh, okay. And I thought, Lord Nityananda, you're such a funny person. I mean, his name, Nityananda, means one who's very funny and always very happy, and his leelas are filled with so many humorous pastimes. And I thought, at the last minute, you're giving me this warning that I'll be speaking about you. I mean, I've spoken on Lord Nityananda for many, many years, and I have volumes and volumes. I actually own a copy of what we used to call the original Juice Book, which was a collection of all of Prabhupada's quotes about the importance of Lord Nityananda. This was put together back in 1974, 75 by the devotees in St. Louis. But, so, you know, we could easily sit here for the rest of Kali Yuga. Talk about Nityananda. There is that much. I'm very blessed that in the beginning of my Krishna consciousness, I had the good fortune of a temple president in St. Louis where I joined who was a devout follower of Lord Nityananda. He's now passed on from this world. And he placed within the consciousness of the handful of devotees under his care the importance and love for Lord Nityananda. We were very well known for trying to stay absorbed in Nitai Smaranam. Sometimes we were wrongly told that, no, you're emphasizing Nityananda too much. Too much? But we'll see here today from these verses and pastimes that there is no such thing as too much when it comes to Nitai. So, you know, in this way I was raised with a understanding in Krishna consciousness of the importance of Nityananda, and this shaped my devotional life in such a way that I understood that Krishna consciousness is not just about doing something, but it's about understanding and believing in your actual heart of hearts what you're doing. Something that will very clearly relate to the pastimes of Nityananda Mahajana, as we'll see today. Now, I should confess right up front that I have no knowledge of Nitai. I have no love for Nitai. It's all simply a shadow. But with your permission, I will make an endeavor to glorify my Lord. Vrindavan Das Thakur will begin. He offers some very wonderful prayers at the beginning of his Nityananda Charitamrita. I was quite surprised to find that there's still devotees that don't know this book, Nityananda Charitamrita. It's a very valuable and important book written by Vrindavan Das Thakur. And I won't offend Vrindavan Das Thakur by trying to chant the Bengali to these verses. I actually, in the 1980s, I had one opportunity to give the Chaitanya Charitamrita class in Sridham Mayapur. And as I was chanting the Bengali, all the Bengali devotees were looking at each other and going, what in the world is he doing to our language? However, these are very nice prayers, so I'd like to start off with the Nityananda Astakam by Vrindavan Das Thakur. Sri Nityananda Prabhu's face is more beautiful and cooling than the autumn moon. The effulgence coming out of his body is supremely beautiful. He always moves like a maddened elephant, since he is always intoxicated with Krishna Prema. He is always mad after Krishna Prema. His body is completely pure spiritual energy. He always has a smiling face. His eyes are very fickle, moving to and fro. His lotus hand always holds a glowing staff. Yes, that is Sri Nityananda, who is beating on that staff, destroying all the reactions of Kali Yuga. You should take shelter of Sri Nityananda and cry for the mercy of Sri Nityananda. He is the root of the tree of devotion to Krishna. I worship that Lord Nityananda. Sri Nityananda Prabhu is the reservoir of all transcendental mellows. He is the life and soul of all the devotees. No one can compare to him in all the three planetary systems. He is very dear to one and all. He is the beloved husband of Shri Vasudha and Shri Janava. He is always in an ecstatic mood of love, always maddened and intoxicated with that mellow of love, Krishna Prema. He is unknown to crooked and evil-minded persons. I worship that Lord Nityananda. Lord Nityananda is very dear to Sriman Gauranga Mahaprabhu. He always does good for the whole universe. He is supremely blissful. He is the embodiment of supreme happiness and blissfulness. He comes to this material world in this Kali Yuga to deliver the sinful persons. There is no limit to his mercy. He constantly does Nam Sankirtan, destroying the pride of this dreadful ocean of material existence. I worship Lord Nityananda. Lord Nityananda tells Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, "O brother, what will happen to the most distressed and fallen jivas of this Kali Yuga? What will happen to them unless you shower your mercy upon them? Please show them a way for their deliverance by which they can approach and get your lotus feet." He always talks like this to Sriman Mahaprabhu. I worship that Lord Nityananda. Lord Nityananda goes to every doorstep and requests everyone with folded hands, "Oh, my dear brothers, all of you engage yourself in the chanting of the Shri Harinam. If you do this and follow my instructions, I promise that you will easily cross over this dreadful ocean of material existence." I worship that Lord Nityananda. Twice now he's referred to it as a dreadful ocean of material existence. Like Augusta Muni, who is drinking a handful of water, who by drinking a handful of water made all the oceans dry up, Nityananda forcibly swallows the ocean of repeated birth and death. He arose like a moon to swell up the ocean of mercy for the welfare of all jivas. He very easily destroys the sinful reactions of the most sinful, degraded persons. He is very dear to the devotees. He is always busy doing good to the devotees. He is like the sun that dispels the darkness of the ignorant fools which descend by their sinful activities. I worship that Lord Nityananda. He is always dancing and chanting, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, uttering the name of Hari. He always engages in Shri Harinam Sankirtan. He always wanders on the streets of every town and village, every city, casting his merciful glance over his dear devotees. I worship that Lord Nityananda. He moves with Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, holding his very soft lotus-like hand. He always looks at the moon-like beautiful face of Sri Gaurachanda and becomes ecstatic and blissful. And Sri Gaurachanda Mahaprabhu always looks at the moon-like beautiful face of Nitai. In this way, the two of them are completely filled with blissfulness. He always makes all the inhabitants of the towns and cities, wherever he goes, mad with the intoxication of his beauty. I worship that Lord Nityananda. Sri Vrindavan Das Thakur says, whoever recites or hears with firm faith this Sri Nityananda Ashtakam will have the lotus feet of Sri Nityananda Prabhu soon revealed to them. These 8 verses are the essence of Bhakti Ras. They are the life and soul of all devotees and the reservoir of all mellows. Sri Nityananda is the essence of the universe, the 3 planetary systems, and by his remembrance, the sinful reactions of all sinful persons will be destroyed. So Vrindavan Das Thakur has completely capsulized everything here, given the whole thing. But we can go further. We find that Swarup Damodar Goswami, from his direct diary, which appears in the 8th chapter of the 4th verses, the 8th chapter in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he also indicates the position of Nityananda. May Sri Nityananda Ram be the source of my constant remembrance. Sankarshan, Seshanaga, and the Vishnus who lie on the Karana ocean, Garbha ocean, and ocean of milk are his plenary portions and the portions of his plenary portions. I surrender unto the lotus feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, who is known as Sankarshan in the midst of the Chatur Vyuha, consisting of Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. He possesses full opulences and resides in Vaikuntha far beyond the material creation. So even Swarup Damodar, the most intimate associate of Mahaprabhu, understands very clearly here. So we're trained in this way to absorb ourselves in remembering Nityananda, in keeping ourselves focused. And we know from the Srimad Bhagavatam that when we begin to worship and focus on a personality, we begin by looking at their feet. Then we work our way up. Srila Prabhupada describes the Bhagavatam itself as being like this. First, we start with the first canto, which is referred to as the feet, before we work up to the 10th canto, which is the lotus face of the Lord. When we look at Radha Govinda, we first look at the feet, and then at the thighs, and the knees, and the waist, and on up like that. So, with that in mind, let's take a look at the markings on the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda and what they represent. So, on the bottom of Nityananda's lotus feet, we'll find a conch shell. Now, this conch shell indicates that those who take shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda are always rescued from all types of distress. Just as during the Arti ceremony, we use the conch shell to hold water, similarly, the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda hold the transcendental water that soothes his devotees from the blazing fire of material existence. Also on his feet, we find a flag. This flag announces that for all the devotees who meditate on his feet, those feet will give security and safe protection from all sorts of fears. Whenever there's the battles, the chariot of the captain comes in, the main general, and there's always a flag. And when the soldiers see, oh, we're saved. You know, you always see that in any movie, the cavalry comes in and the flags are waving, oh, we're saved. So here, the flag of Nityananda's feet is what will save us. There's also a fish. This fish mark shows that just as a fish cannot live without water, similarly, these surrendered devotees cannot live a moment without directly associating with Nityananda's lotus feet. He also means that the mind is very fickle, just like a fish that goes back and forth through the water. And so only after much meditation will the lotus feet of Nityananda sink into the heart. The lotus flower. This mark indicates greed for the nectar in the minds of the bee-like devotees who meditate on Nityananda's feet. The lotus also signifies that just as a lotus grows out of the water, similarly, those whose eyes swell with tears when they behold the divine lotus feet of Nityananda will also receive the greatest benefit. There's a bow. This mark reveals that those who take shelter of Nityananda's lotus feet will perpetually be free from all worries and difficulties. It also shows that those who are stupefied, that's the word here, stupefied in the material world remain motionless like a target. But that when the mind of a devotee meets the target of his lotus feet, then prema condenses as a result and overflows as the tears coming from their eyes. Pretty deep stuff here. The goad. Goad refers to a three-pronged symbol, a three-pronged spear, so to speak, used for controlling elephants. This mark indicates that meditation on Nityananda's feet brings the elephant of a devotee's mind under control and keeps them on the right path. It also shows that those who stay on that path towards his lotus feet become superior amongst all persons, just as one riding on the top of an elephant travels far above the rest. I had this opportunity in Padayatra in 1986. Yeah, when we were going through the villages of Bengal to ride on the back of an elephant. And, there'd be this procession coming into the village. And it's right, when you're on top of an elephant, it's like, wow. You're really a pretty big thing. So, just like that, he's mentioning here that by keeping the lotus feet of Nityananda, we become above like that. And there's an altar, a little three-tiered altar. This mark proclaims that the sins of all those who meditate upon Nityananda's lotus feet are burned up on the altar of sacrifice. Furthermore, it indicates that just as the universe is nourished by the Brahmins offering fire sacrifices, which we'll do later this morning, similarly, those who offer their minds in sacrifice to the lotus feet of Nityananda stimulate universal nourishment that affects all of creation. By meditating on Nityananda, you do good for the entire universe. There's a half moon. This mark symbolizes how his feet truly provide the desired objective of a devotee. It also signifies that even the devatas like Lord Shiva, whose symbol is the half moon, have decorated their own heads with the soles of his lotus feet. It also shows that devotees who likewise decorate their heads with the lotus feet can become as exalted as Lord Shiva. There's a picture, Kumbha. This mark shows that Nityananda's feet hold the golden pitcher full of purely nectarian ambrosia to be freely consumed by the surrendered souls. If you want nectar, that's where it is. Indeed, they will never be bereft of the nectar from his pitcher because it always remains full, even when someone you're taking from it. This mark also indicates that his feet can pour out the nectar that extinguishes the blazing threefold misery of these separated devotees. Dusk. This mark cuts down the 6 enemies of a devotee: lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy, and bewilderment. It indicates Teja Tattva, or the principle of brilliance by which Nityananda destroys the darkness of sins from within the heart of his devotee. So sometimes, we feel like, oh, am I really thinking about that? Am I really hoping for that? Is that thought really crossing my... Take shelter of the lotus feet of Nityananda, and that chakra on the bottom of his feet will cut through that. The sky. I would love to see this mark, the sky. How does the sky represent it? At any rate, it's there on his lotus feet. And this mark indicates that his lotus feet are all pervading throughout the entire creation, both within and without all manifestations. It also shows that even though his lotus feet are everywhere, they are unattached, just like the sky is not attached to anything. A chhatra, an umbrella. This mark proves that those who take shelter of Nityananda's feet are shielded from the incessant rainfall of material miseries. It also denotes that those who sit in the shade of his lotus feet become exalted like great kings, because a king always, when a king goes out, just like we have in the other room there in the museum, the umbrella used when Prabhupada came to LaGuardia Airport. So a saintly person always has an umbrella. When we take the deities on procession, we always have an umbrella over them. So this umbrella indicates an exalted person. So one who takes shelter of the umbrella of the lotus feet of Nityananda also becomes exalted. A cow hoof. This mark indicates that those who have taken full shelter of uninterrupted meditation on Nityananda's lotus feet, to them the great ocean of worldly existence becomes very small and insignificant, just like the water held in the hoof print of a cow. thunderbolt. This mark reveals that the meditation on Nityananda's feet smashes to pieces the mountains of karmic reactions and sins that are there with his devotee. It also indicates that whoever holds on to his lotus feet becomes as exalted as Indra, who holds on to such a thunderbolt. So this isn't possible for everyone, but the pujaris, they get this opportunity to touch the lotus feet of the Lord, hold on to those lotus feet, put their head on those lotus feet. A rose apple. This mark indicates that his feet are the only worshipable objects for those who are the residents of Jambudvip, the island of the rose apples, according to Vedic cosmology. There's the club, the gada. This mark is to show that Nityananda's feet are capable of chastising the elephant of sinful lust. It further indicates that for whoever takes shelter of his lotus feet, all their ancestors will also benefit. This is discussed in the pastimes of Prahlad Maharaj in the 7th canto. How many generations before and after are benefited by being a devotee. The spear. This mark assures those who wish to have the miserable bonds of mundane sphere cut and take shelter of Nitai, his feet immediately appear to slash all such entanglements and difficulties. You see this in a lot of the Hindi films. You know, you got somebody, they're all tied up, and then the guy comes in with their cuts all the ropes, and all of a sudden they're free. This is what this mark on Nityananda's feet represents to the devotees. The flowers. This mark indicates that the divine fame of his lotus feet spreads everywhere, just like the fragrance of a flower spreads. It also shows that his feet are not hard, but that they're very soft, just like flower petals. Creeper. This mark symbolizes how intelligent persons hold on to the lotus feet of Nityananda, just like a creeper firmly grasps whatever it's ascending, going up the side of a wall or a building, up a tree like that. And finally, the plow. The plow symbolizes the need to uproot the nasty weed-like things in the heart of a devotee. Thus, the field of the heart will become fertile, and the seed of the devotional creeper can be sown and grow there. So these 20 items are on the bottom of the lotus feet of Nityananda. And that's this afternoon, as we bathe Nityananda and wash his lotus feet, we can meditate on these different markings and getting that shelter there. So when we speak about Nityananda, we hear many amazing pastimes. Some might even say unbelievable descriptions of the activities of Nityananda, such as him pushing a tree together for his playmates. When he was a young boy, the two trees were growing, and the boys liked to play on them, but they liked to jump up. They were just a little too far apart. So Nityananda said, no problem. He took them, pushed them closer, and so the branches intertwined so the boys could play back and forth from one tree to the next. Or his swimming with the crocodiles. He's swimming in the Ganga, and the devotees would be on, Nityananda, crocodiles, crocodiles. Nityananda would just wave at them and keep swimming. He had no fear like this. Or his mad pastimes at the house of Sachimata. Describes in the Chaitanya Bhagavat that one time Sachimata, Vishwambar, Vishnupriya were there, and Nityananda showed up dressed in the four winds, if you get the meaning. Well, not exactly. Dressed in nothing but the four winds and an elaborately fancy turban. And Lord Chaitanya looked at him and said, Nityananda, what are you doing? Nityananda simply swore and said, oh, this is how I am today. So Lord Chaitanya took a piece of his own cloth and covered Nityananda. Nityananda said to Sachimata, bring me sweets, bring me sweets. So Sachimata brought 4 sweets, and he took them and threw them on the floor. And then he said to Sachimata, where are the sweets? You have not brought me sweets. Sachimata was a little stern. She's like the mother. She said, Nitai, I know your divine nature. Don't play your tricks with me. Now sit down and behave yourself. And Nityananda looked at her and said, yes, Ma. He sat down and he ate the sweets. So all of these pastimes of Nityananda, we might think, I don't know about this, or we may be even a little skeptical. Once there was, the Lord called Raghava Pandit, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He called Raghava Pandit aside. He said, I want to tell you something privately. He said, Raghava, I want to reveal to you confidentially that Lord Nityananda is no different than my own self. You must understand that whatever Nityananda wants me to do, I do it. Without any intention of deceiving you, I will tell you everything I do is through the potency of Nityananda. He and I, we're one and the same. That which is rarely obtained by the great mystics steeped in meditation is easily obtained if one takes shelter of Nityananda. Therefore, engage yourself with sincerity and with deference in the service of Nityananda, knowing him to be the Supreme Lord. Raghava Pandit is a very important devotee. Those of you that are familiar with Mahaprabhu's pastimes know he plays a very key role. He's considered in the Chaitanya Charitamrita to be one of the 3.5 most important devotees to Mahaprabhu, confidential. And so Mahaprabhu takes him aside and says, any of these, no, Nityananda is the real deal. Now, the importance of Nityananda is also stressed by Vrindavan Das Thakur in his Chaitanya Bhagavat. He says, by the mercy of that Nityananda, one can know Sri Gauranga. And by the mercy of that Nityananda, one can recognize who is a Vaishnava. This is important for us. By the mercy of Nityananda, this is the most important point right here. By the mercy of Nityananda, one gives up the bad habit of criticizing others. Welcome to Kali Yuga. All this poison out there. You can give that up if you take shelter of Nitai. You have the bad habit of saying things. I was doing a Purohit service for Vaishesika. First time I did. I've done it for him many times, but the first time I did, he brings his disciples forward. What are the regular principles? No intoxication, no media, no gambling, and no criticizing Vaishnavas on the internet. Boom. 5th regular principle. So you take shelter of Nityananda, you can give all this up. Why? Because the servants of Nityananda never criticize anyone because their mouths are filled day and night with the praises of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You take away the dirty thing, you put something positive. And let's not be mixed words here. Criticizing others is a dirty thing, very bad thing, horrible thing. So they can't do that because they're too busy glorifying Mahaprabhu by the mercy of Nityananda. While experiencing that happiness, there is no room for any other words. The devotees of Nityananda are therefore at all times and in every way extremely careful because the servant of Nityananda does not want to lose the wealth of their life, namely the mercy of Gauranga. It is not a matter of small fortune that one becomes a servant of Nityananda because they are entrusted with revealing the greatness of Gauranga to others. This is what we embrace. By the mercy of Nityananda, we're able to give the glories of Lord Gauranga to others. This is our life and soul. This is the Sankirtan mission of Mahaprabhu. This is what Srila Prabhupada has given us, to go out and give this. But how do we do that? By the mercy of Nityananda. That's what New York is all about. Why live here otherwise? I mean, it's freaking cold as anything right now. I mean, I left Alachua, it was 68 degrees. I got here, it was 32. I'm like, wait a minute. And I was talking with Humps yesterday, the cost of rents here. I mean, I lived here in the 80s, and it was ridiculously expensive. I mean, the apartment I lived in the 80s, probably $5,000 a month. So many difficult things here. When I'm in Alachua, there's sunshine everywhere. There's just sky everywhere you look. You hardly see this guy here, the buildings. And all. So, what's the point? Because this is the facility for giving Mahaprabhu to others. That's why Kumarupa told me one time when we were on the streets, we were doing a book distribution here. He looked at me, he said, Vrindavan or New York? Nothing else. So at any rate, that's because we get the mercy of Nityananda, and then we can give that to others. So because we hear these things that may make us doubtful, it's possible that one may question Nityananda. But by hearing all these strong statements from Mahaprabhu himself, from Vrindavan Das Thakur, we can appreciate the potency, the power of Nityananda. But there's a story told in the Nityananda Charitamrita about one very serious, honest, good-hearted Brahmin who saw Nityananda doing some of the things Nityananda does, and they can be, wow, pretty amazing. And so he went very sincerely to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, he wasn't just any Brahmin. He had actually studied in Navadvip with Mahaprabhu. So, he had a relationship there and he had respect. But he had just become a little suspicious of Nityananda's behavior. So he was attached to Lord Chaitanya in this way, but he was not fully informed of the amazing potency of Nityananda. So one day he decided to go to Mahaprabhu. And he visited the Lord. And, he felt so much attraction and love for Mahaprabhu. And so on one of his visits there, he placed himself at the lotus feet of Mahaprabhu and he inquired, he said, "Oh, my Lord," he said, "I have a request. If you will allow me," so get the humble mood here. Now say, "Yeah, I got a question for you." There's a famous picture when I was doing some preaching here when we used to do the tables out in the streets in the different parks here back in the 80s. And there's this guy, he's like in my face, like this. And I'm just kind of like, yeah. So this is the mood of this Brahmin. He said, "If you'll allow me, I have a question." He very humbly approaches. He said, "If you consider me to be one of your servants, then I would like to hear your views on a certain point. Lord Nityananda, the Avadut, is now residing in Navadvip. I cannot understand his behavior. People say he is a renounced order of life, like a sannyasi. Yet I see he chews betel mixed with camphor all the time and spits it inside. A sannyasi is not supposed to touch things like gold and silver and gems, and yet I see him decorated with gold and jeweled bangles. I've actually had darshan of one of the bangles with 8 jewels in it that Nityananda wore. It's in Vrindavan at, what's that place? Anyway, it's there, yeah. He said he decorates his body with all of these substances, and instead of wearing a saffron lungi, he's wearing robes of silk and has sandalwood put on him and wears flower garlands. And another of the Lord's quaint activities, the Brahmin's very polite. We can see this here. He has some doubt. He's sincere, but, he's got to get this out of it. So he says that he does not carry a sannyas staff, but he carries instead an iron rod. And he's always seen in the company of Sudras and persons of lower caste. I could not see Nityananda always acting strictly according to the instructions of the Shastras. And once I assailed him about his doubts. Many persons, they hail him as a great personality, yet why does he not act in a way befitting a renunciate? Oh, my Lord, please remember that I am just your menial servant, so I beg you, please purify my mind with this question. So, this is very, very important. This pious Brahmin, this associate of Mahaprabhu, this person that had faith in Mahaprabhu, did not have that faith in Nityananda, at least not yet. And so, with submissive inquiry, he approached Mahaprabhu. And the story is told that the Lord revealed the esoteric meanings of Nityananda to him without any reservations. The Lord smiled gently at the Brahman's words and spoke as follows. O Brahmana, listen carefully. One who is very elevated and a realized soul is free from all faults. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated, those who are free from unwanted desires such as attachment for things unconnected to Lord Krishna, those who have transcendental mundane vision to see only the material covering of the soul, namely this gross body, and have risen to the platform of perceiving the spirit soul in all living entities, thus have attained equal vision. Those who have become elevated to the spiritual platform of seeing face to face with the Supreme Lord, who is beyond the three modes of nature, those great souls who are dedicated to me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, do not have to suffer or enjoy the results of either pious or impious activities, nor do they have to act according to rules and regulations. Very cautiously, we should embrace that particular quote from the Bhagavatam. Mahaprabhu continued after quoting this section of the Bhagavatam. Then he said, Lord Nityananda is absolutely pure. He is in this material world like the lotus flower, which is untouched by the water that it grows in. Oh, Brahmana, you should know for certain Lord Krishna is eternally within Nityananda. If anyone tries to imitate Nityananda, he will suffer terrible consequences and incur heavy sinful reactions. If anyone other than Lord Shiva drinks the deadly poison, then they will surely die. The scriptures carry sufficient examples to substantiate this. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it says, O king, fire is all-consuming, yet it remains unaffected and uncontaminated by any sin or dirt. Similarly, a very powerful and potent person should not be condemned for transgressing religious laws. So this is the examples he's giving here. Then Lord Chaitanya gets a little stronger. He says, therefore means in conclusion. So he's made these points here as to the potency of someone who's on this level of Nityananda. Therefore, if anyone criticizes Lord Nityananda's activities, then that person will have to suffer their own mistakes, which will be severe life after life. Even if a very elevated soul acts in a derogatory manner, if that person is criticized, nay, even ridiculed, then the person ridiculing them is surely doomed. This is a guidance to us to be very cautious when we speak about the misdeeds of others. There'll be misdeeds of others. It's Chaitanya Charitamrita is filled with these. Krishnadas, the personal servant of Mahaprabhu, and dragged off by the gypsies, got involved with the gypsy girls. So these things happen. Govardhan and his brother Govardhan and Hiranya. Yeah, they were basically stealing from the government and spending it, as the Chaitanya Charitamrita says, on very sinful things. But Mahaprabhu delivered them. So, these things will happen. But if one criticizes such persons, they have to be very, very cautious. All these conclusions, Mahaprabhu says, we can learn from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he concludes finally with saying this. So, my dear Brahmana, I have related to you these topics from the Srimad Bhagavatam so that you may give up any suspicions or doubts about Lord Nityananda. Lord Nityananda is the highest of transcendence. Persons with little knowledge and little piety cannot comprehend his position. If any person becomes attracted to him because of the miracles he performs from time to time, then that person also will attain liberation. Lord Nityananda has advented only to liberate the fallen conditioned souls. They will actually be liberated because of his causeless mercy. And thus, Lord Nityananda's behavior is beyond the jurisdiction of any rules and regulations. Who has the capacity to understand Lord Nityananda within their mind? Without properly gauging his extraordinary and super mundane character. If anyone criticizes him, then he may be serving, if anyone criticizes him, even though he may be serving the Supreme Lord, they will still lose all of their devotion. So you must immediately leave for Navadvip and make sure everyone there understands these esoteric facts of the character of Lord Nityananda. If by any chance someone criticizes him, no one can save that person from imminent doom. On the other hand, this is the beauty of Mahaprabhu's statement here. But all these horrible things are going to happen. But here's what can happen. On the other hand, whoever loves and respects Lord Nityananda is true in his devotion to myself. This I confirm firmly. Not only confirm it, but confirm it firmly. So these two very strong words together. If Lord Nityananda even marries a Muslim girl or enters into the drinking house, this is a famous verse we're all familiar with, his lotus feet are still worshipable even by Lord Brahma. Lord Chaitanya's potent words acted effectively in the Brahmana's heart. He became blissful, and his faith and love for Nityananda increased tremendously. That Brahmana came to Navadvip. The first thing on arrival, he went and he met Lord Nityananda. This is a very important point, what's about to be said next. The Brahmin honestly admitted his offenses to Lord Nityananda. The Lord heard him very patiently and then graced him with his own causeless mercy. So not only did he have a genuine inquiry and genuinely approach Mahaprabhu for it, but then when he understood it, he considered, I've made offense. And so he went to that person he had offended and genuinely apologized. Very important. I pray at everyone's feet. This is the Vrindavan Das Thakur saying. I pray at everyone's feet to invoke their blessings that birth after birth I can remain Nityananda's servant and he my eternal master. This is my only desire. So in this way, even if we have some doubt, now of course all of us are beyond that, we would hope. That's why we're here. But even if there's some doubt or, if we sincerely try to understand, then all of these things can be made to us. Now, as Mahaprabhu spoke with Raghava Pandit and explained to Raghava Pandit what an important position Nityananda held, he actually considered Nityananda to be superior to him. And there's an interesting concept behind this. During the Treta Yuga, when Ram appeared, the younger brother was Lakshman. And because of his position as a younger brother, Lakshman had to go along with a few things that his temperament did not sit well with. He had to tolerate Ram's being mistreated. He had to tolerate Ram being banished to the forest. All of these different things. Lakshman was a little fiery and wanted to do it, but Ram's a senior brother, so he had to follow. So at the end of that Leela, Lakshman took a vow. I will never incarnate as the junior brother again. So in the next incarnation is Krishna and Balaram. Balaram's superior. Balaram begins to, kill a few demons on his own and like this. And then incarnation is Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. Nityananda appears first. And Nityananda is actually spiritually in a senior position to Mahaprabhu if we look at it hierarchically as far as gurus. So, Mahaprabhu would occasionally want to stress this point very much. So one evening, Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya were sitting together, and they were in the courtyard of Srivas Pandit. And it was very common for them to spend time at Srivas Pandit's house. It was like, what would we say, a safe zone, and it was a place they would be able to go and, how we might say, let their hair down. Just, the Nagar Sankirtan, the kirtans that would take place there, this was the blossoming of this really esoteric style of kirtan. So all of this took place at Srivas's house. So they were there, and Marai Gupta came. And Marai Gupta came in, and first he offered his obeisances to Nityananda, and then he turned and offered his obeisances to Mahaprabhu, to Chaitanya, and then he offered his obeisances to Nityananda. And when he got, Mahaprabhu looked at him and said, Marai, you've made a mistake. You offered your obeisances in the opposite order that you should have. Marai said, my dear Prabhu, as I am inspired by you, so I have done. And Mahaprabhu answered him. He said, all right, that's okay for now. But later we will discuss everything once you have understood this. So Marai Gupta spent his time there, and then he departed. He went to his home, he took his meal, had his prasad, and then he took rest that night. And in his dream, he had the most amazing situation. The chief of the Mahabhagavats, the topmost personality, Lord Nityananda, appeared with his cloth tied in the manner of a wrestler. And he was walking majestically through the streets of Navadvip with the gait of an elephant. We're just talking about elephants. I was watching a video Indraduna Maharaj just posted from his trip to Srirangam and the elephant. And I was taking very specific note, the way the elephant walks, one foot and then the other. Just very, there's no question. This is, determined and focused. And so he walks with the gait of an elephant in this dream. And above his head was the many-headed serpent. In his hands were a plow and a club. In the dream, Nityananda appeared actually as Balaram. And following behind him, with a peacock feather on his own head, was Lord Vishwambar. So Lord Vishwambar called out, Lord Nityananda is none other than Haladar, the manifestation of Anantadev, who serves him. And when he saw this in the dream, Murari could understand. Oh. So in the dream, then, after making this claim, Mahaprabhu looked at Murari and he said, Murari, now have you understood? If you breach the proper conduct, how does that look for everyone? And in the depths of this dream, Murari Gupta called out, Oh, Nityananda! Oh, Nityananda! And then he awoke. And his wife was very alarmed. She heard him crying out. She came over and said, Krishna, my dear husband, what's all right? Murari Gupta said, oh, no. There is nothing wrong. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. So the next time, Murari Gupta came to Srivasa's house, and there was Lord Chaitanya and there was Nityananda. He went first and offered his obeisances to Nityananda, and then he offered his obeisances to Lord Chaitanya. And when he got up, Lord Chaitanya said, oh, I see now you have understood. So in this way, Lord Chaitanya reveals to even his most intimate of servants. Murari Gupta's writings, the Murari Charita, are one of the main sources for information on the pastimes of Mahaprabhu. This is how important he is. So Mahaprabhu wanted to be sure that he understood this very significant point here. Okay. Well, I have 6 minutes. I have 6 more hours worth of notes. All right. So I want to conclude here with, there's so much we say about Nityananda. The Chaitanya Charitamrita is just filled with pastimes after pastimes after pastimes. We recently were speaking about some of Nityananda's pastimes in regards to Advaita, because it was just Advaitacharya's appearance day. And Nityananda could eat amazing. Now sometimes you'll sit down with a devotee and you, at least at my old age, I'll look at some young devotees here, and how can they possibly eat that much? How is it possible? But in reality, they're devotees of Lord Nityananda. Advaitacharya had invited Mahaprabhu and Nityananda to his home for prasadam, and he began to serve. Now, on this occasion, Nityananda had been fasting for 3 days. So he gets the invitation from Advaita, I'm going to have a feast, I can break my fast. So Advaitacharya seats them both down in front of banana leaves and comes in and begins to serve. Nityananda is looking at the quantity there, and he says to Advaitacharya, he says, I've been fasting for 3 days and I thought I would break my fast, but here you're hardly giving me a morsel of food. And Advaita said to him, he said, You're just a reject Paramahamsa. Your only purpose is to give difficulty to householders like myself. And Nityananda laughed and he said, I may be what I may be. He doesn't deny. He says, I may be what I may be, but I am the guest in your home and you must feed me, so bring more rice. Now, in that section, it describes that Nityananda can eat, I'm just quoting the Shastra here, 94 pounds of rice at a time. I told you in the beginning, there may be some things I don't know. We know from these quotes, be very careful. So, in any way, and then Nityananda was always very playful with Advaitacharya. There's the water pastimes in Puri at Navindra Sarovara, where they're splashing each other, and Nityananda's really getting into it with Advaita. Actually, interesting point, the Advaita Prakash, which is written by Ishan Thakur, the servant of Advaitacharya. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, these pastimes with Nityananda and Advaita are all taken very lightly and jovially. In the Advaita Prakash, Ishan Thakur is like, why does Nityananda keep giving my Advaitacharya so much trouble? He's got this different view of it, So these pastimes are taken by the devotees as just the loving exchanges between Nityananda and Advaita. So we're going to read here the 12 names of Nityananda. Nityananda Avadutandur, Vasudha Pranabalaba, Janavi Jivata Patti, Krishna Prema Pada Prabhu, Padmavati Sutta Shriman, Sachinandana Purvaja, Bhavo Matta Jagatatra, Rakta Gaura Kalevara. Sri Nityananda Prabhu is the embodiment of eternal bliss. He is the moon of all Avadutas, and his beloved life and the beloved life breath of Vasudha. Lord Nityananda is the husband enthusing Janava with life. Nityananda Ram bestows ecstatic love for Krishna, and he is the Lord and Master of the devotees. Sri Nityananda is the dear son of Padmavati, and he is full of splendorous, transcendental majesty. Nityananda is the older brother of Sachimacha's son Nimai. Nityananda Avaduta is maddened in overwhelming ecstatic emotions. Sri Nityananda Prabhu is the savior of the universe. His complexion is golden tinged with a touch of red. Sri Nityananda Chandrasya Nama Tvadasaka Shubham Ya Idam Praham Prata Pratyuttara Pratennara Saklesha Rohita Bhutva Prapnuyat Svamano Ratam Tunam Chaitanya Devasya Karunam Bhajanam Bhavet. One who recites or hears these 12 auspicious holy names of the moon-like Nityananda Chandra every day between 6 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. will become free from all difficulties and attain their most cherished desires. Very soon, they will receive the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Dev. Sri Nityananda Ram Ki. So many stories and pastimes that can be told about Nityananda, but we'll conclude there because we do have lots of activities to prepare for today. We have Nityananda Ashtarashatanam Homa mid-morning, and then we have the installation of Nityananda and his Abhishek this afternoon and early evening. And then, of course, Nityananda will eat 94 pounds of rice and leave a little bit for us. So if anybody has any questions, I'll try my humble best to answer them. Otherwise, we can just take the rest of the day and absorb ourselves in the lotus feet of Nityananda. Actually, a little bit of a funny story. In St. Louis, when I grew up as a brahmachari, as I mentioned, we were all very much encouraged for the lotus feet of Nityananda. Nitai Pada. That was the common greeting. Haribol Prabhu. No, Nitai Pada Prabhu. That was how we greeted each other. So, in the kitchen, now anybody that's served in the kitchen, especially a larger temple like this, it can get a little crazy, a little hectic, and so, So, one devotee had taken some plaster of Paris and molded them very, very expertly into 2 feet. And at the ankles, these little copper wire came out and connected the two. And then there was a second one that had a little loop on it with a hook. And then these feet were painted. And then on the bottom, different emblems, such as we just read about, were carved. And this was hung on the pot rack just about head height. So when things get really crazy and in the kitchen, the devotee will go and go. This is how crazy we were as brahmacharis. You're not Anyway, questions? No? All right. So we'll just spend the rest of the day conversing about Nitai, trying to remember Nitai, trying to purify our life by his blessings, and as this says here, taking up the mercy of the shelter of Nityananda and realizing that he gives us love for Lord Gauranga. Thank you very much. Nityananda Ram Ki Jai. Oh. Maharaj has a question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. You mentioned the 12 names of Lord Nityananda, and I wonder where we can find those, and if you would recommend that we participate in the sadhana that you suggested, and what would be the benefits?
Those 12 names of Nityananda are composed by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Yeah. Actually, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has written quite a few things of this nature. The 12 names of Mahaprabhu, the 12 names of Nityananda, the 108 names of Mahaprabhu. So yes, those are from, and the name of them, I forget the exact Bengali name of it. I've got it in my notes upstairs, but they were written by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Yeah. They're easily available on the internet, yeah. All right, thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope to be of some service to Radha Govinda while I'm here, and all glories to Lord Nityananda. Hare Krishna.
His Grace Caturatma Prabhu Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Jai Nimai, Jai Nitai.